Hi, I am author Juliana Stone, and I am here today at Bitten by Books to celebrate the release of my second book in my Jaguar Warrior series. And this is the cover. Um, this is Jagger's story, His Darkest Embrace. And he is my youngest Castile boy. Uh, and this book pretty much continues where the first one left off. Uh, it's about 3 months later, and Jagger has been in the jungle in his jaguar form. He had no desire whatsoever to return to the life that he had before. At the end of the first book, a lot of stuff happened, and he was kind of lost in his jaguar form. And when he, weeks later, when he realized where he was and got some of his memories back, he had no desire to return. He needed some time, I think, to heal emotionally, not so much physically, but more emotionally. So this is 3 months later, and he's in his own little corner of paradise in the jungle in Belize, and doesn't realize that his whole existence is about to change once again. And things get pretty dire in this book. It's pretty much life or death. So I'm going to read a couple parts from the first chapter. And here we go. Sky Knightley was knee-deep in shit. In fact, it was way past her knees and sitting up near her ass. And that was putting it mildly. Only an idiot would be caught at night, alone in the jungle, so far from base camp. What the hell had she been thinking? She inhaled a ragged breath as she melted deeper into the thick stand of trees. Her heart was banging against her chest like a freaking jackhammer, and Sky rested her forehead against a tall pine tree, her skin slick with the humid jungle air. She was tired, hungry, and now she could add scared as hell to the list. She peered out into the thickening gloom, back toward where she had just come from. She was pissed and had no one to blame but herself. She knew how dangerous things were, especially now. But the damn cave had been incredible, and she'd been so caught up in exploring and recording that she'd lost all track of time. If Finn were here, he'd kick her ass. Hell, she'd kick her own ass if she could. Number one rule, always return before dark. When Sky heard a snap echo from the dense grouping of trees across a small clearing to her right, she stilled. Her breath shot out in small staccato bursts as the fear inside of her burrowed its way deep into her heart. She gritted her teeth as another sound followed the first. Bastards weren't even trying to hide their presence, and she might just very well pay the ultimate price for her stupidity. She'd become aware she was being followed soon after exiting the cave. Usually she didn't have a problem losing trackers, but these men had proven ruthless, which led her to believe they were not your average guns. They were not looking for tourists to rob. They wanted something. Her heart flipped over, and she tried to calm her nerves. Were they jaguar? Her razor-sharp eyes normally could pick out a target hundreds of feet away, but sadly, her raptor-like qualities only shone in the daylight. Her powers to shift and morph into her eagle form faded as soon as the first inky fingers of night crawled up from below. Such was the curse borne by all eagle knights. They could only function at the fullest of their abilities with the caress of heat on their backs and the kiss of sun on their faces. Unfair, really, considering Sky's many enemies had no such problems. The jaguar, nocturnal creature that it was, could shift, hunt, and kill whether it be night or day. And the magics, they could spell and charm whenever the fancy struck. It was one of the reasons her people had been hunted to near extinction hundreds of years ago. She thought of the band of jaguar warriors that had until recently lived not too far from the archaeological dig in Caracal. They were a particularly vicious bunch. She should know. They'd captured her and held her prisoner for several months. Sky bit her lip and tried to push back the rush of memories that always accompanied thoughts of the DaCosta jaguars. She broke out into a sweat and felt panic begin to take hold of her belly. The The DaCostas could never know that she'd survived the destruction of the compound and subsequent battle at the Mayan ruins in Caracal. If they even had the slightest inkling that an Eagle Knight was still messing about in the Belizean jungle, they would never stop looking for the portal. They would assume, correctly so, that the portal had been moved from its original resting place in Mexico to a safe place here in the vast mountains of Belize. Only her father had known the precise location. He'd been murdered while trying to carry out his final mission, to seal the portal forever, and with his passing, the final resting place of the portal had vanished. Hatred, thick and nasty, threatened to choke her airway as her thoughts slid to Cormac O'Hara, the man who'd killed her father. So that is the beginning of the chapter. Introduces us to the heroine, Sky Knightley, who played, she had a very small but pivotal role in the first book. So I'm just going to skip ahead a few pages because you always like when your hero and heroine meet. Let me see, where can we go? Okay, so a few things happen and she is trapped at the top of a waterfall. Something slithered through her as she locked, oh no, that doesn't sound good, never mind. I'm reading it wrong, so. If Sky didn't know better, she'd say it felt as if the animal were warning her of danger. She shook her head. All jaguars were evil. They lived to hunt and kill. They could take human form, yes, but there was nothing remotely human about them. Her feet scraped along the shallow bottom as she neared the edge of the falls, and slowly she turned. The animal roared its disapproval and jumped into the cool depths of the water, its body encircled with mist as it glided toward her. Sky glanced below and tried not to acknowledge her fear of the long, dark, and dangerous drop. Her head felt dull, thick with pain, and she shook herself, her eyes once more drawn to the wall of mist. Sparks seemed to fly from within, and she was taken aback as a tall, lean, incredibly ripped and naked man slid from the fog to stand before her. His green eyes glowed with a feral fire, and her heart began to beat a rhythm that left her breathless. He moved toward her with animal grace, and Sky panicked. She took a step back and teetered on the edge, feeling the water swirl around her feet as it cascaded below. The man stopped, and she noticed his tattoos through the darkness that separated them. They clawed their way up abs that looked as if they were carved from stone, black symbols that caressed taut muscle. He was a jaguar warrior. She had no other choice. Sky inhaled a ragged breath and murmured to herself, "Watch over me, Daddy," before closing her eyes. And then she jumped. So that is how the first chapter ends. Sky was attacked in the jungle by two nasty DaCosta jaguars. And another jaguar came to her rescue. One that, it's Jagger, obviously. She doesn't know who he is. She only knows that she needs to get away from him because she doesn't trust jaguars. So that is the main conflict between these two. There's a huge trust issue, but then things start to move along because there is a mission, a very important mission that needs to be carried out. And the only way she's going to get it done is if she lets Jagger help her. So that's it. His Darkest Hunger. It's out tomorrow. No, sorry, this is His Darkest Embrace. See, I'm not really good at these video things, but whatever. His Darkest Embrace. Thanks to Rachel and everyone here at Bitten by Books for having me. And I hope, if you read my book, I hope you enjoy it. And please let me know. My website, www.julianastone.com. Let me know, and I'll see you around.